Hello, everybody. This is Gary Matheny. Thank you for joining me for today's edition of Liberty Observatory, the program that takes on various issues and thoughts with an eye towards liberty. You know, this has been attributed to Sam Adams in a letter that he wrote to a daughter. And it basically said, our best opportunity for happiness is liberty. So the things that I do on this program are intertwined with an eye towards liberty. And so today's program is called High Risk, High Reward. And please like, follow, subscribe with this program. When I first started doing this program, I was more laid back about it. You know, it's just kind of like whoever wants to listen can listen, and that's fine with me. But then, I started understanding that the algorithm kind of like sidelines you. If you don't have enough people like or subscribe or follow, then you get sidelined. And so I don't want to be on the sidelines. I've said this for many, many years, that I would rather be a player in the minor leagues than a bench warmer in the major leagues. And that's kind of been my philosophy of life. I want to be a player, even if I'm not a star, even if I'm not in the major leagues, I still want to be a player. And so today's title is High Risk, High Reward. Its subtitle is In Search of the Authentic You. So I'm going to try and inspire you to search for the authentic you. And so let's talk about the challenge of thinking independently. And so a lot of times you hear high risk, high reward. You think in terms of financial investments, high risk, high reward. Take a higher risk, chances are you get a higher reward. You don't want to take a high risk for a low reward. And so high risk, high reward is its most obvious expression in financial circles, but it also applies to a wide variety of matters in life. And so we're going to talk about the challenge of thinking independently. High risk, high reward. Well, what is the risk of living independently, of thinking independently, thinking for yourself? What are some of the risks that are associated with it? Well, first of all, you have to learn and be willing to swim against the tide. This is not for the faint-hearted. This is for people that are willing to carve out their own niche in life. So you have to be willing to swim against the tide, which in some respects can be exhausting. But in search of the authentic you, it can be rewarding. Let me give you an example. President Donald Trump, he in his first debate in 2016, he was lined up with like 15 other Republicans in a debate, and Megyn Kelly asked the first question, how many of you are going to endorse the Republican candidate no matter who he is? And then like 15 other people raised their hand. Yes, I'll endorse the Republican candidate. And Donald Trump said the obvious. He said the obvious. He said depends on who they are. Because there was already some animus and difference between the other candidates by the time they did that debate. And that's the obvious right answer to give. You don't want to endorse a value, something like, yeah, I'll vote for whoever's the Republican. And guess what? About half those people that waved their hand didn't endorse them. And so it means nothing. It's a nothing question, but it gave Donald Trump an opportunity to show us his star power, because he was willing to speak, think independently in front of the whole nation. You know, a lot of us, we think honestly and speak honestly and independently when private conversations, but as soon as the public conversations are necessary, we become like sheep. We don't come out and say what we think. Donald Trump does. And that's a difference that makes a difference, that shows you he is an independent thinker. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with everything he says and does, probably won't. And he understands that. But he is an example of an independent thinker. Another high-risk issue associated with in search of the authentic you is that sometimes you will have feelings of loneliness. You will feel outside the cultural norm. You will have feelings of loneliness. I remember in 1976 when I became a Christian, it was the height of Billy Graham, and I'd watch some Billy Graham stuff on television. And, I remember thinking, me and Billy Graham, we're the only Christians out there, And the reason is none of my family members were Christian, and I was kind of exploring new territory. And I knew very few Christians, and I didn't seek out Christians because I was a brand new Christian, and it didn't strike me that it was a good idea. That came later. And so you will have to deal with feelings of loneliness from time to time, because you will be outside the cultural norm. In fact, sometimes you will be an outsider, or even ostracized. Some groups may actually oust you. Your name may be used in a bad light from time to time. And so basically, you have to be willing to suffer these little things in search of the authentic you, and in search of learning how to think independently, learning how to think for yourself. And I think I'll give you an illustration, a political illustration. If you put 5 leftists in a room, one of them will come out being the stronger personality. They will congeal together, and they will come out for some cause. Whatever the current cause is, save the whales, climate change, Gaza, whatever the current cause is, they will come out and work on that. But if you get 5 righties together in a room, you get 5 right-wing people in a room, what do you come out with? You come up with 5 different opinions. And so the question is, can they congeal their 5 different opinions into a union or a unity to where they can express a common goal and work towards that common goal? And so basically, the main deal is, in thinking independently, is being willing to take on the high risk. You can understand that there's also a high reward, so the high risk is worth it with the belief that there is a high reward. And so let me just put it this way. When you're old, like me, you thought to be an independent-minded person, and so you don't have any feelings of bitterness, no real feelings of regret, though there was a ton of mistakes. And so why didn't you have that feeling? Well, because you implemented your own thoughts and your own goals. There's nobody to blame. I can't feel bitter about my mistakes. There's nobody to blame with me. I can't be jealous. I can't be resentful. All these negative feelings I can't have, because it all lies with me. And let me bring you up another example of Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was from Cape Girardeau County, a couple of counties from where I'm at in Missouri. And he came from a family of lawyers. But when he was a very young child, I don't know, he may have been 10, 12 years old, his family owned a radio station. He got involved with that. That was his passion. His dad, thought it was a great hobby, but he wanted his son to get a college education and join a family in the practice of law. But Rush had such a passion for radio that he didn't even finish college. I think he made it through 1 year of college and then jumped into the radio scene. And so here's something that if he would have followed his dad's desires, finish college, go with a law degree, let radio be a hobby, he probably would not have been happy. And then he would have spent most of his life thinking, I shouldn't have done that. I should have got into radio full time. I should have taken my chances. High risk. And ultimately, he got high reward. Now, most of us are not going to get as high reward as either Donald Trump or Rush Limbaugh, though it's a mixed blessing when you achieve success, because there are always people that want to pull you down. And it's just the way life is, and that's part of the high risks associated with independent thinking. Another thing is the society itself benefits from free thinkers. Think about it for a moment. One of the chief aspects of a free society are free thinkers. What you want to do is you want to avoid the lemming effect or the sheep effect, where we just become a bunch of, as they say, mind-numb robots, and we follow the cultural norm, we follow what's expected of us, and we never break free from that. And so think about the human condition in modern America. We have our own personal demons to deal with, our own issues to deal with. We have familial issues, our family, control, domination, manipulation, or whatever's going on in our family. We all have family issues to deal with. And then we also have cultural or society issues to deal with, the expectations associated with that, the mores and what's considered or expected of somebody in culture or society. And so here we've got a human being in modern day America who needs to work through their own personal demons in order to learn how to think independently. They have to work through familial issues, because a lot of times you can have healthy family relations, you can have unhealthy family relations, and most of us have both, partly depending upon what family relation you're talking about. And then you have society expectations and norms and what they want us to be. And so you have to be willing to work through all that stuff as an independent thinker. And I don't know how anybody does it without Christ, because how do you have a power to bring about these changes in your life without faith? It's hard to work through these personal issues, anxiety, addictions, depression, all these personal issues you have to work through, or family issues. Maybe your dad was outright mean and insulting to you throughout your whole childhood. Our society issues, our society is not considered a wholesome society anymore. And maybe it never was, who knows? But anyhow, you have to be able to work through all this stuff to achieve that of an independent thinker. And if we have enough independent thinkers, then we won't all be lemmings and we won't all be sheep, and we will open the door to sustain a free society. We want to achieve a free society. I want everybody to be able to think freely and independently and basically find the authentic you. Now, in the ideal world, I would like you to find your authentic you as a Christian, because that's the difference that made a difference in my life. But at the end of the day, I can't force you. I can't compel you. In a free society, you either have to come to that conclusion yourself or not. But Christ can help you unravel these entanglements that are within ourselves, within our family, within our society, etc. And so, as a free thinker, you are not swayed by groupthink. In other words, the group is going to think something, no matter where you're at. If you're at a board meeting for a business, not for profit, if you're at some committee meeting that's being run through some government entity like the county commission, if you're wherever, whenever you got two or more gathered together, so to speak, the danger is groupthink. And at no point am I suggesting that you be disrespectful or mean-spirited or hateful towards other people. Be respectful. Be decent towards your fellow human being. But think independently. Your insight may be the difference made in the direction of whatever entity you're talking about. In other words, you may be able to steer that entity in a direction that's really positive and productive, rather than just having it spin its wheel because everybody's looking for everybody else to make a decision. And guess what? Nobody makes a decision. And so the intention of today's episode is to inspire you to seek out the authentic you. It is high risk and it's high reward. And so be willing to assume all those things associated with high risk, with an understanding that there can be, not guaranteed, high reward at the end of the day, where you're the person that stands up at the end of the day as the authentic you. Thank you for joining me today, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you.